Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd meeting of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We will start by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on our agenda tonight is to approve the minutes from our May 26th meeting. Do I have a motion to do that? Mirzad? Second, Andrew? Any comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Okay, minutes are accepted as written. The next item on our agenda is a committee name change. So the June 8th, 2021 Board of Education meeting, this committee was granted a name change. The new name of this committee is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, DEI. And so that is a little bit more consistent with other efforts nationwide that call it DEI instead of EDI. And you'll find a story on the Guilderland website with the new name of the committee and also the definitions that we've been working on. The second item on our agenda is the thought exchange. So committee members, we all participated in a thought exchange, and so we're going to share and discuss the results today. I know, Dr. Wiles, you did share out some of the results, but if you'd like to take it away, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure, thanks, Amy. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and just walk through the report that I shared with all of you for those who are watching tonight, because I have not shared this report widely. We'll put it in the minutes after this evening. So just give me 1 second here. I hope. Okay, let me try again with a different approach. Let me try the tab. Do you folks see it yet?
Yeah, Marie, we see it.
Okay, well, my screen is still spinning, so we'll let it go with that. First of all, thanks to everyone who participated in the thought exchange. This is a tool we've been using quite a bit in the school district to give people an opportunity to weigh in on various topics and to see what others think about those topics. And so here is the report that has been generated. This happens right through Thought Exchange, which is really quite convenient for us. So that's our basic question, which will guide kind of our discussion tonight. Really, what are the things that went well with our committee, and what are some things that we want to work on as we go forward? So the first section here, I'll just share, we had 33 participants. Now I know there's only 20 of you, but on Thought Exchange, you can come in multiple times. So every time you come in, you become a new participant. So we had 33 participants, 34 thoughts, and 367 ratings, which is great for a small group. So we appreciate that. And then we just had one survey question for all of you. And that was really some self-report on your personal level of comfort of engaging in this conversation. And you can see the results that at the very least, everyone felt neutral about engaging in conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Most felt comfortable, and we had some among the group who feel very comfortable with that. So that's good to know. So the first thing I'm going to do is just share some of the top thoughts. So the way this works, individuals get to see numerous thoughts when they go in, and they score them or rate them on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. 1 being I don't agree at all, and 5 being I agree wholeheartedly. And it's just interesting to see when all is said and done, kind of which thoughts came to the very top. So I'm not going to read all of these, but I'm going to take a minute to scroll through, but it's probably worth mentioning that the very top thought that was ranked 1 out of 31 is that, we're starting to have significant discussions, and the committee needs to lead the community in having open and fair discussion, leading to a full transparency of the problem faced in the solutions and the solutions proposed. So among the group, that really resonated with the most. I just want to point out too that student voice came up not in a lot of thoughts, but they were all very highly rated, and I'll show you that in a bit. There's also some insight here about our committee work, our subcommittee work, and interest in having goals, more about our students, a real interest in finding out more about the particular kinds of things that happen on a day-to-day basis here in Guilderland, getting our audit done, thinking about having a facilitator, again, the subcommittees, discussion about the learning component. And I promised I wasn't going to read, so I'm just going to stop doing that. But those are some of the top thoughts. I'll just scroll for a little bit longer here because there's not too many thoughts to get through. Okay, so I know that's impossible to read all of them, but I'm just giving a little bit of a view of that. The other way the thoughts are arranged are by themes. And I just want to point this out before I open it up for conversation. There's 2 ways that these themes can be expressed. The way you see it on your screen right now is it displays the information based on the average rating of the various topics within a theme. So the student voice theme had the highest ratings of all of the responses. You can see there were 3 thoughts in this theme, and you can see what they are. The next highest one was the subcommittee work. And again, there were 6 thoughts in this theme, but that's where individuals shared their thinking about our work on our subcommittees. The next category was just specific issues. And this one had the most thoughts and the most varied kinds of things about particular topics or issues or problems that we want to begin thinking about and working on. I think this is a lot of subcommittee work in here. There were some comments about our use of time, some good, bad, and indifferent within this theme. And then the last part was about our discourse. And this is where the idea of, do we need an outside facilitator? And do we have varying comfort levels? The commitment of the district was recognized here. Do we want to participate in training? And then the mention of our changed format for the meeting. So lots of good information to serve as a springboard. And the purpose of tonight really was to make these findings kind of the start of our discussion rather than being the end of our discussion. So I think, Amy, I'm going to hand it back to you to kind of facilitate, part A, what worked well, and part B, what needs work.
Sure.
I'm going to stop sharing for now. And if someone wants me to put it back on, I can easily do that.
That would be great. It's a little easier to see everybody this way. Thanks. So if anybody, we can use the raise hand. And so why don't we start with what is the committee doing well? What are the things that we've done well, and that perhaps you want us to continue doing? Seema?
I was just going to say, I agree with the comments about the subcommittee work, that I think once those have been formed, it's been a little bit easier to get some tasks or start putting some tasks together with that number of people. And so I don't remember what part of the school year that we established the subcommittees and really started doing that work, but it was obviously took some time to get there. So I'm looking forward to the subcommittee work, maybe probably doing a big lift in the group.
Great. Maxine?
Obviously, as a student, I was really happy to see that student voice is ranked really high. That meant a lot to me, and I'm sure it meant a lot to all the other students on here. Like, our work is not going unnoticed, and I think that since most of the things that we're doing directly affect the students, I think that it reflects well on us that people think that student voices are being heard and represented.
I'll say hear, hear. Anybody else have any comments on things that you feel that our committee is doing well? Mike?
I like the idea of possible training options, and I wonder about what audiences we bring that to. So I'd like to explore that. And I appreciate the discourse piece, because through discourse, I think we can all increase our understanding. So.
All right, we can shift over. Does anybody have any things that they think the committee should focus on to improve? Sandra?
I think that the training that we just talked about would be really helpful for improvements as well. I mean, I don't have anything specific that I feel has to be improved, but I think training can always give us a boost up.
Thank you. Gloria? Gloria, are you able to unmute?
We're for get
Gloria, you're a little broken up.
done was a clear message to the people on the committee that thought it is something for getting specific information forward.
Gloria, you're a little broken up and frozen. So if you can understand me, maybe you can type your comments in the chat or try it in a little bit. Leah?
I did agree with the comment about maybe picking a model instead of reinventing the wheel. I hope we can do some other footprints so that we can use our time in implementing and a little bit less brainstorming.
Good thoughts. Tibisai?
I agree with Leah about the model, but I disagree about the implementation. I think that this committee has a long way to go in understanding what it is that we want to do. And there's still assessment that needs to be done and collection of data that needs to be done in order for us to understand where some of the problem areas and pockets are. So I don't want for this committee to turn into something that's performative and for us to just do things to kind of check boxes off. I really am hoping for long-term intentional changes within the district. You know, the data that's come out that Dr. Wiles has shared is important data. I thought that it was alarming, the hiring and the recruitment data that came out. So it just is an example of how data shows us where our opportunity gaps exist. and where we can attack them intentionally and thoroughly. So we have some data already collected. I think a framework will help us to focus in on what those things are. Um, but then just getting some overall understanding. I think sometimes in our discourse, some problematic things have been said in our discourse. So having ways to facilitate those conversations that might not be necessarily on camera and might not be, disrespectful of each other, of each other's feelings and thought processes, I think would be good as well. So figuring out ways to diffuse and facilitate when things go left a little bit would be good. We've had some of the public comment that's mentioned transparency. I think that we have to do a little bit of a better job at educating our community as to what this actually is, and what they can expect to kind of level set expectations. Like, this is not a one and done type of deal. This is something that's going to take time. It's culture shift. So putting out more information on that would be great. And I would love to see more students. I know that some people said teachers. I would love to see more students on this committee. I know they're stretched thin, but even if it's maybe like a focus group, something to really get more of the student voices. I think it's been so valuable. These student leaders have been amazing, and I'm honored to be a part of this team because of them. But yeah, those are just like my general points of improvement would be framework, more assessment data so that we can be intentional, helping the community understand that this is going to be a long game, not a short game, and more student engagement.
Thank you. Nora.
So I was gonna make a point about the time we spend in meetings. I think a lot of the time we have points that we've made and they end up coming up a lot. It can be very redundant. And I don't know maybe what the solution is to that, but maybe there needs to be like a better means of communication or everybody seeing that what we have already done so we don't end up bringing the same thing up in meetings.
Thanks, Nora. Joe?
So if I was hearing correctly, both from Tibisai and Nora, we might have a couple of areas where we need to develop like a protocol or a practice as a committee to when we need to address when something is said that offends someone else. And then also maybe we come up with something very brief, like we just type the word ditto if we need to agree with something. If we're so moved to agree with what we heard, something like ditto in the chat box is like our shorthand, perhaps. Okay. Thank you for clarifying, everyone.
Seema?
I just wanted to mention the groups or clubs at school that are already doing some of this work. I find it really helpful to see what they're doing because they've been doing this for a while. So it's helpful to see what they've already done, and then also to see, where they are on this trajectory. And I know this didn't come up in the thoughts, but I think when the new person is hired for the DEI director, I think that will also make that will also obviously impact this group. And so I think it's great that, we've taken our time to really, to try not to do too much, before we even know where we're going. I think somebody mentioned, maybe it was Tibisai, that, or maybe it was in the thought exchange, that people wanted to engage the community more or start doing some events. But I feel like this is not the kind of work that we want to rush and do wrong. So, it's to be transparent and to have shared decision making takes some time. So I was actually really happy to see all the positive comments, though, on the thought exchange. So that was good.
Thanks, Seema. Nidra?
Yeah, I think just to kind of like add on to what Seema is saying, I agree that I mean, and I know at least personally, I was feeling a little bit like almost rushed in the subcommittee work, that like we have to be doing something, we have to be, you know, like starting our initial work. And I don't know if, you know, that's necessarily something that we want to be doing. Like everyone, I mean, before me has said that this is ongoing. And I would really like to emphasize my interest in the idea of doing some more training or a series of workshops or something like that for our committee to prepare us for how we're going to engage the community and really getting on the same page of like, what is this? So that we can very accurately and concisely inform the community about what it is that we're doing here. So.
Thanks, Nidra. Mirzad?
I can totally agree with what Nidra's saying. I know the point's been brought up on how we want to essentially, like, there's this gap in what we understand education-wise, and we're all trying to get there, whether it be through training or whatever it might be. I think that one of our steps that we should take, though, as soon as we all feel comfortable or on a similar level, I think we got to start doing work that's going to be sustainable, and it's going to take us into like more long-term projects or just leave some kind of impact or footprint behind. I think that a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now, we're as we all know, you know, we're all in the building stages and we just got started. But I think the sooner we can start getting real stuff done, the sooner we'll see good results. So that's all.
Thanks, Mirzad. I think a lot of good points are being brought up, and I'll just put out there that I'm wondering if as we convene in the fall, we can take the results of the thought exchange and take some of the comments that were made in tonight's discussion and help us come up with how we're going to move forward as a committee. And that might be some way that we move forward at the beginning of the school year. Dr. Wiles or Mr. Johnson, do you want to respond to the hiring process?
Sure. The position was posted yesterday on our website on OLAS. It's going out to the Times Union, and we met Dr. Rivera, Dr. Wiles, and I met with Matt Grimes a week and a half ago or so, and he gave us a bunch of leads on other places that we need to send. He actually said that he would do some of that work for us. He'd be happy to. So we're going to send him the posting and the job description. So we're working on it. The posting closing date is July 16th.
Thanks,
And
Regan.
I just will add, we were hoping, we put on the posting for a on or about September 1 start. If it can be sooner than that, great. But we're also going to be realistic.
Okay. All right, Maxine?
I just had a quick question. Someone mentioned, maybe it was in the chat, having student groups like come sit in. How does it work to add new members? Like, is there a cap on how many we can have in this group? Or I was just wondering, because I think that if we wanted to bring on more students, I think that would be great. But if there would also just be temporary members, I think that would be fine too.
Dr. Rouse, do you want to answer how people are appointed to the committee?
Well, the actual committee members, the 20 members on the screen, were given a board appointment to serve for a 2-year term. So I think we need to think about how to bring those voices in a way that they don't necessarily have to be on the committee, but they can have roles or, be, I'm thinking about the various groups that already exist in the high school. Maybe they can be guest presenters at one of these meetings, or maybe they want to be having a role on some of our subcommittees where a formal appointment isn't necessary, but they can lend their expertise. So those are some ideas that I would suggest.
Thank you. Nicole?
Hi, yeah, so that was an idea that I had posted in the chat, and so thank you for bringing that up, Maxine. But I agree, Dr. Wiles, that perhaps having them be guests periodically, maybe once or once a quarter or however we're meeting, and talking about what the students are doing too, because I think that's extremely helpful. We do get different types of viewers on these meetings than perhaps the information would get to otherwise about what's going on in the high school. So I think it would be really helpful to have those voices, because the student experience is so very valuable.
Just a thought, at our regular board meetings, we have once a month a student representative come to the board meeting to talk about what's happening in the high school. Something maybe for this committee to think about, what if we were to add a standing item to the agenda that was just report from, student groups or I'm not sure what it would necessarily include, but it could be a regular part of our meeting to hear from students.
I would agree. And like I said, I think, the feedback that we're getting tonight from the thought exchange would be really helpful, as we reconvene in the fall. Nora?
So somebody brought up a facilitator, and I was just kind of wondering how that would work. Would they be at both subcommittee meetings and big meetings, or like what would they be at every meeting? How would that work? I was just wondering.
I'll jump in and say it could work however we wanted it to work. We need to think about, if we wanted an outside facilitator, what would the scope of that role be? Whether it's just with this committee, or if it extends to the subcommittees, or if it's, something that our new director of DEI, it becomes part of his or her regular job description and duties. I mean, the job description is written in such a way that it certainly would fit in there. So, I just think there's options there, but great point.
Thanks, Nora. Nidra?
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand on. I was just going to say that I was wondering if our DEI coordinator might be a good person with, obvious training maybe in that area of facilitating and some of the things that Tibisai was mentioning about how to address things when they come up in the moment in our meetings.
Mirzad, then Andrew?
So just going back to a point that I think Dr. Wells made earlier, she was mentioning how we're all serving for, I believe, 2 years, but from a student perspective, how is that going to work? Like, is there going to be like in 2 years, is there going to be like a new reappointation process, or are we just going to automatically serve until we graduate?
Another good question. And the steering committee met, I think it was just last night, we were talking about how not to have this whole committee turn over altogether in 2 years and then have to start with 20 new people. I think we need to think through that. And so ditto for our students, do we have you serve through your senior year and then also appoint underclassmen at the same time? So I think there's some structural things we need to definitely sort out, so we're not recreating this wheel yet again in 2 years.
Good question, Mirzad. Andrew, then Seema?
I think it's really important for us to do training and research and look at other models and all that. But at the same time, it's very good to have fresh eyes on things. There is out in the tech world where I work, where there's this thing called the way of ignorance, where you want to enter into looking at things, as if you knew nothing. Okay, because that's the way creativity and some stuff may happen.
Thanks, Andrew. Seema?
This is kind of answering Mirzad's question about the student piece. I think when we were thinking about students being on there, we were thinking about, like long-term, and that's why I think if there was a senior, while we would love to have seniors, been involved, but they were going to leave it, and this group started, late into the school year. And so like Dr. Wiles mentioned, we talked about it last night in terms of staggering and how there could be some continuity with members on the committee, but then also some fresh eyes being on there. So I think figuring that out probably this next school year would be important, because from what I understand, there's a lot of people who would like to be involved, but having a full group turnover would be really difficult to get things done. I can't imagine just going back to definitions with like a whole new group. Not that they would have to do that, but you know what I mean.
Thanks, Seema. I think we've had a really good conversation about some things that our committee is doing well and how we want to move forward. Does anybody have any closing thoughts to close out this part of our agenda? Dr. Wells, perhaps we can get in the habit of copying the chat before the meeting is over, because I think we have a lot of really good ideas in the chat.
Yep, I will do that. Maybe you should too, just we have a belt
Yep.
and suspenders.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, so thanks everybody. We'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is the report from our subcommittees. So just as a reminder, before this month's meeting, subcommittees were asked to use 2 questions to guide them in order to provide an update to the committee and the community this evening. So the first question is, what is the status of your subcommittee's work? In other words, what have you done so far? And the second is, now that each subcommittee has had a few meetings, what are the objectives or goals of your subcommittee? So I know that the subcommittees started meeting in either February or March. So some of the subcommittees might have had 3, 4 meetings if they were moving pretty quickly. So we'll start with communication. Maxine, are you tonight's representative?
Yeah.
Okay.
At our last meeting, we welcomed a new member, Miss Jen Carter. She has been like a Gildan resident for a long time, and we're really excited to work with her. Some of our goals and objectives, the overall goal of the communications subcommittee is to facilitate open conversation among Gildan students, staff, families, and community that enables them to build a diverse, equitable, and inclusive learning environment together. Some of the things that we wanted to do were, we want to make sure that we ask the tough questions and be proactive instead of reactive. We want to make sure that all voices are heard, represented, and responded to. And we want to find ways to use all available channels and styles of communication. So we want to be able to use social media, the website, email list, to make sure that we get our message out to students, staff, parents, community members, so that everyone understands what our goals are. A lot of our tasks have to do with the website. Mr. Genovese and a lot of other members on our committee wrote a lot of great points on different tabs that we want to have on our website, so people are really clear about what our objectives are. There's a lot of things in the news about DEI committees getting into trouble with community members because their objectives are unclear, or parents don't understand what's going on. So we want to make sure we have a what are we doing and a what are we not doing section. Why are we doing this? How are we doing? What will success look like? We want to make sure that we are constantly updating the website so that everyone is aware of what we're doing at different times. And then something else we wanted to do for next year was we wanted to recruit some influencers, so people who maybe start a social media account, get communications office involved. We wanted to try and get something in the enterprise. And we also wanted to have a project logo design. From Dr. Elliott's presentation a few meetings ago, there's some students that are amazing artists, and we thought it would be a great idea to get them involved with a design based on like our little words: be open, be fair, build together. And we also wanted to develop a program to teach microaggressions. A lot of our work, again, is on the website, and we are really excited to finally have a plan laid out so we can really get going with what we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Maxine. All sounds great. Tibisai, are you tonight's engagement reporter?
I can
Nidra's-
report for the engagement
right, great.
subcommittee. So we met in earlier this month, and we were joined by, I think it was about 7 or 8 members from the community who had expressed interest in being involved in our subcommittee. So that was really great. Just kind of a status update of where we're at in our subcommittee work. I think that it has taken us, just kind of considering how much is kind of like umbrellaed under our engagement subcommittee, a while to get organized and kind of just get on the same page. We had really good discussions about the learning components that I feel like were the majority of our discussions in our beginning meetings, which I think was helpful because it helped us to kind of like establish ourselves as a group and figure out where we as a subcommittee need work, just kind of like in our discourse. So this was another, by and large, organizational meeting. We were able to break up into subgroups and have more clearly defined like the 3 main, I guess, objectives of our subcommittee. So we have a professional development subgroup that has developed questions that will be sent out to reach out to the chief equity officer and the director of equity, diversity, and inclusion at both Niskayuna and Schenectady to try to touch base with neighboring districts who are also doing this work. So that's where we're at with that piece. We also have been, and I know some people have talked about the student voice and interest in getting students who are already doing this work involved. So we have started trying to form a partnership with student groups at the high school, starting with the Black Student Union. So we've developed some questions that we would like to gain input from students about including what their hopes are to, you know, as results of this DEI work, and really try to use that as a springboard to encourage student engagement. I think the ideas of getting students involved would be a really great, that the engagement subcommittee would be a good place maybe for those students to be involved, or you know, forming a subcommittee of their own. But that's work that we've started on already. And then our third subgroup, our third kind of like objective was the curriculum. So we have spent some time gathering up documents, starting with the social studies curriculum, and that subgroup is going to begin examining the curriculum and creating something of a curriculum wish list, questions about curriculum development and kind of how other districts have approached this will be included, I think, in our professional development subgroup conversations with Niskayuna and Schenectady. I'm interested in how they kind of started that work, considering the people on our subcommittee and in our subgroup have, you know, never necessarily examined a social studies curriculum for, you know, inequities and opportunities. So that's where we're at with our work. We decided that we would give ourselves a break in July, but most people were very eager to continue on and be ready to start and continue our work in the fall. So we decided that we would meet in August. And many people expressed excitement about this DEI coordinator, and we're very hopeful that we'll get to work closely with that person on, you know, where we should go next with professional development and curriculum examination, especially. So that's it for us.
Great. Thanks, Nidra. Seema?
Well, I just had a question for Nidra. I don't know when you talk to those other districts, and I don't know if this exists. You know how there's different positions in school districts, and they'll have like a capital region. Like I know science supervisors in the capital region meet together, and probably other disciplines as well, to have like a network. And I don't know how many other districts have like a DI coordinator or a facilitator or whatever, but that would be interesting to see, or if people are interested in creating that. I know we weren't the first one to hire this position, but I imagine that there will be more. I think it would be nice for whoever this person is that we hired, that they have a network to work in the community.
Yeah, that's actually one of the questions that we have on our list, to find out how districts might already be communicating and sharing ideas. So yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nidra. Next committee is the research committee.
Hey, this is Luis. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Oh,
we
yeah.
can.
Okay, the status of work. We have researched the capital region neighboring school districts, DEI organizations, activities, and plans. I also researched the Boston, Central New York, Westchester school districts and their DEI activities. We generate the school district DEI reports, meeting minutes, recommendations on future DEI activities, policies, and rewards. All these documentation are available on the committee Google Drive now. Our objectives or goals down the road. I think we need to do more research on the Guilderland Central School curriculum, library literature policy, and activity. Those related to DEI. We so far haven't really looked carefully and at how we are doing in this respect, and what resources we have. And we will work with other subcommittees to implement and execute our recommendations, particularly the DEI online training materials, the possibility of workshops, student faculty DEI awards. So far, we haven't got any student volunteers in our subcommittee work, but we would like to attract some or motivate some volunteers in all levels, elementary, middle school, high school, because we want to get to know and research our school district DEI related topics like classroom teaching materials, student relations, mental health, student clubs and events. That's kind of the next step we're trying to do.
Great. Thanks, Louis. I have the notes from our last meeting in front of me, so I'll do the audit committee, but anybody can chime in anytime with something that I missed. So as far as the status of our work, we've realized how big the work is and how much help we're going to need to complete the task. But in the meantime, we're working on looking at what's important to our community, where we're going to gather the information. So we've looked at audits from other school districts and discussed which aspects we want to include. And so as far as objectives and goals of our subcommittee, we're looking at the long-term goal of the audit, but possibly doing some work in the short term, like a survey or some focus groups in the fall. One of our concerns that we talked about was getting authentic data from students and staff. So we talked about doing a listening tour specifically of students from the anti-hate rally that will help us fully grasp the authentic student experience. So one of our thoughts was that it could be that we're doing the work, but it's really not reaching everybody. We also talked about being designated as a no place for hate high school. So we could look at what we're doing well and whether the program has been effective or not. And then we talked about, since the work is so big, having an ongoing rotation of equity evaluation so that the audit could encompass everything on a rotating basis. And we really talked about prioritizing getting a pulse of how people are feeling at the beginning and throughout the process. Anybody, members on the committee, did I miss anything? No, okay. All right, any other questions? Thanks, John. Any other questions for the subcommittees? All right, so moving on, the next item on our agenda is the summer activities. Everybody will be receiving copies of the book, 5 Practices for Equity-Focused School Leadership. And Dr. Wilds, I'll let you talk a little bit about the book and what our next steps might be.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. So about 4 or 5 months ago, I came upon the text by that same title, 5 Practices for Equity-Focused School Leadership. And I got an advanced copy and read it and realized it is a terrific resource, both for our leadership team within the school district, and also got copies for our steering committee. And quickly realized that this is a book that this group should read as well, because it's a very pragmatic, thoughtful, generating reflection, kind of a roadmap to leading with equity in mind. So we purchased copies of the book for everyone on this committee, and we have them here at the district office. And one of the logistical things we'll need to figure out is, if you're able to swing by and pick it up, or if we need to put them in the mail to you. But we'll figure that out offline with an email. So no worries about that now. And then the idea is that since this group is not meeting over the summer, that we give all of you the opportunity to read the first 3 sections of that book. The first section is, well, I won't go through all the sections, but they're kind of the foundational pieces. And at the same time, our leadership team is focusing on these first 3 sections this summer too. So I feel as if we have all read and reflected on the same information and opportunities, we will have created some synergistic energy around the work. So that's the idea. And then when we get back in the fall, we can talk about next steps. I think it's the 4th section of this book is actually about equity audits. So it'll be very much focused for that subcommittee. But anyway, it's a learning component that I think will be a unifying text for all of this work going on in the district.
Thanks, Dr. Wiles. So if you can, Dr. Wiles, maybe perhaps Deb Sim or yourself people can either come and pick up the book or let her know what they need as far as getting the book.
Yeah, we'll send an email to everybody tomorrow, and you can say, I'll swing by or drop it in the mail, and we'll do it from there.
Sounds great. Maxine?
Sorry, I don't mean to backtrack, but I just had a quick question for you, Dr. Halchuk, about the sub committees. You said that you were reaching out to students from the anti-hate rally, right? I think that's great. Obviously, anyone who's there, a lot of the students, every student there was super passionate. The people that we were working with, there was no one from the LGBTQ+ community, and there was not a large number of white students working with us either. So I just wanted to keep that in your mind while you're looking for students that are interested in interacting. I think that it's important that we try and get as many student perspectives from as many different backgrounds as possible.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I think the committee was thinking about just some initial thoughts, and the students like yourself at the anti-hate rally really had kind of put themselves forward and maybe would be initially open to having that discussion. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is proposed meeting dates. So you can see it on the agenda. We've put together a list of proposed meeting dates for 2021-22. Again, this is just a list of proposed dates. Dr. Wiles, I don't know, they're just really for information at this point?
They are, if we can take a look at them, one of the hardest things to do is to get 20 people together on a regular basis. So Mrs. Sim and I looked at the calendar, kind of like we look at the calendar for school board meetings to try to map them out for the whole year. And in general, these are, I believe, Wednesdays that are the week after the regular board meeting, unless there was some kind of a conflict. So I don't know the most efficient way to look at this, but maybe when we send our email about how would you like to get your book, we'll also include and tell us if these meeting dates work. or significant conflicts with them. But this time seemed to work pretty well for the group. And if you have enough lead time, you can usually rearrange a little bit if you have to.
Yep, and I think you're right. We're not going to get everybody to be a perfect date for everybody. Kelly?
So moving forward, are we thinking about meeting in person? Like, I know, crazy thought, and I don't know, that might adjust times for people or whatever. I don't know what the thought process is around that. It's kind of, I think we're talking about it as a board. We're coming back. I'm not sure. I haven't actually thought about it. I think we have a meeting next week. I don't know if it's online or if it's in person, actually.
In person.
But that's just something to, okay, so we'll be in person next week. It's kind of something to think about as we plan these meetings, I suppose.
Okay. All right, well, that's the last item on our agenda. As we conclude the meeting before 8 o'clock, does anybody have anything before we conclude? All right, thanks, everybody. Motion to dismiss. Mirzad, second. Barb, all in favor? Okay. Thanks, everybody, for a great meeting. Have a great night.
Thank you.
And we can get the chat too, right? Maybe copy and paste it because there was a lot of stuff.
Yep,
in the chat.
I've got it.
Okay, cool.